welcome to Talking F1. We're a podcast from Grand Prix Grandstand that does more or less what that title says. We talk about F1, and more specifically, that means we talk about Formula All, meaning Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3, and the W Series. And in a slightly different format this week, we're going to focus on one series at a time. So be sure to check out the rest of the GP Grandstand YouTube channel to hear us talking about W Series and Formula 1. But for now, after a 6-week break, Formula 2 was back with 3 races and a first-time race winner. And for F2, we're going to be talking about whether it's a coincidence that consistency rhymes slightly with Oscar Piastri, bit of a stretch, Schwartzman breaking his Silverstone curse, Zhou avoiding inheriting that curse, and Lundgaard undeniably inheriting the ART second seat curse. And what else does Vershaw need to do to be for sure for getting a seat in Monza after taking that win? I'm your host, Jim Kimberley, and joining me to talk F2 are Thiemo Albers-Daly and Jacob Phillips. And let's get straight to it, because Jacob, football didn't come home, but Formula 2 did. But did it deliver?
Well, Jim, it was an absolute scorcher, wasn't it, this weekend? But unfortunately, it wasn't really a scorcher on the track. The fourth round, isn't it, of F2 this season? I'd say comfortably for me, it was really disappointing. It certainly didn't live up to the previous year. Even Monaco, for example, produced some fantastic racing. We had the wet race there, overtakes for the lead in Monaco. This weekend, it just felt really, really drab. And one thing that it really springs to mind for me is it a case of, we just haven't got the consistency, or there's no momentum carrying forward. Is it a problem that there's 6 weeks between the last round bit in Baku, and there's not 8 or 9 weeks, maybe a bit less than that, but until we go to Monza. So yeah, it wasn't great. But if you're Richard Vershaw, or well, he's loving it for sure. But if you want to use that joke, but yeah, no, it wasn't really good. And to be honest, didn't really enjoy it. To be honest, what do you think?
No, for me, it wasn't the memorable weekend. Silverstone kind of showed us with all the races with W Series, Formula 1, and let's forget about all the, the last gasp Hamilton racing and the early stuff from Hamilton. But the rest of the race, there's DRS trains, and in W Series we saw as well, not much in the way of overtaking. And Thiemo, we had 6 races because it wasn't sprint qualifying, it was a sprint race. Any of them in Formula 2 particularly interesting for you?
I think it was definitely the feature race was the feature of the weekend in Formula 2, but at the same time, I've got to agree with Jacob, the bar wasn't set particularly high for it to clamber over in the first place, which is surprising for F2 and F3, really, when you take them together, because normally you maybe have one of the sprint races is a bit of a duffer, but then the other one is just excellent. But it wasn't just, I don't know if it was the safety car breaking up the first one so much that never really got going properly enough, or what, but there wasn't that special sauce in the mix this weekend for that. But maybe as Jacob said, if you're Oscar Piastri or Richard Vershaw, maybe you'd be disagreeing with that.
Yeah, and let's not forget Robert Schwartzman, of course, as well. He had a cracking start to the race weekend, should I say, and took another victory. So his championship, we mentioned before, we shouldn't write him off, and it's starting to come to him a little bit. Let's start with sprint race 1, and as ever, they kind of merge into one. But Schwartzman had a terrific start from P5, I think it was, where he started, and then straight up into P1. And didn't look like he was ever going to give up on it. So I know we spoke about this previously, but we spoke before about the best driver academies. Schwartzman, Ferrari is kind of the star of the Ferrari driver academy at the moment, Jacob, and he could really be in for a shout of grabbing a seat next year.
Yeah, he could be, and he certainly needed that performance. It's not been the best season for him. I thought he'd be, he's still third in the championship, and there's still a long way to go. So, he could still be in contention for the championship, but he's had a mediocre season up till now. He certainly needed that victory, and it was a dominant victory. I wouldn't say that he ever looked challenged for the victory. Really, once he got into the lead, it was always coming home for him. But yeah, he certainly might have a chance next season at Haas. Maybe Mick Schumacher might move up to Alfa Romeo, and there's certainly going to be seats at Alfa Romeo. I don't think Kimi's going to be sticking around for much longer, or Gio. So yeah, he's certainly going to put down the marker, certainly.
Yeah, and I saw some rumours as well today coming around, and there are definitely rumours about some potential link up with Williams. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but between Williams and Zhou. Thiemo, Zhou didn't have the best weekend off the back of said news, but he best Saturday, but he kind of recovered quite a lot by Sunday. Weird weekend, right? A little bit of a weird weekend. Was a championship leader going in. He's not at the moment after 2 nil points and 1 win. How did you rank Ranu this time?
I mean, spoilers for later in the show, but he's not in my top 3, but he might be in the other bottom. He might be in the bottom 3. So it was a weird one for him. Because I mean, if you look at the weekend as a whole, the feature race is obviously where the big points are handed out. So you could say he had a great weekend if you were just looking at it at a glance. But for those of us diehard fans of it, we're kind of a bit disappointed. And like we say here, pretty much every podcast, I think you only need one bad weekend for it to all be mucked up for you, and it really kind of did that to him this weekend. I mean, he was comfortably leading for most of the season up to now, and now he's not. So it's going to be, and then there's a massive wait until the next round in Monza. So it's going to, it might fester a little bit with him for that, and you just kind of, I'm not jealous of him, and if there's any links for that Williams seat, it's not going to help him, because obviously there's a lot of stuff that goes on during the summer break in the F1 season, and with all the other rumours going around about Fiat and Hulkenberg and then other F2 drivers that are more than able to fill that seat, then with Bottas as well floating about maybe in there, then he's not helping himself at the moment after this weekend, and maybe he could have done with a much better overall weekend.
If you're going to go for any seat with the Alpine team, you kind of want to go and win Formula 3 and then win Formula 2 straight away. Piastri, Jacob, is looking like he's the business. I mentioned the consistency in the intro, really is Mr. Consistent this season and now leading the championship.
Yeah, and I always say, in the junior Formula, the consistency is one thing that always lead out. We saw it with Schumacher last year as well. I think he only had 2 victories on track, but won the championship in the end. So he's plodding along. He didn't was it 1 podium this weekend he picked up, and then 2 other consistent points finishes. So yeah, in the feature race there, exactly. So yeah, he didn't pick up a win, whereas Schwartzman and Zhou did, and you'd obviously want to say that there is his closest title rivals. So, but yeah, he hasn't got many wins this season. But if he plods along like that, once we get to Monza and stuff, if Zhou and Schwartzman have mediocre sprint races and Zhou crashes out again, then you've got to think, come to the end of the season that Piastri will be in line for potentially the championship, and hopefully, although we know how the Alpine program works, there's a few people blocking seats there. Hopefully, maybe we'll see Piastri in F1, but that's a big fingers crossed.
It does remind me a bit of Charles Leclerc when he was coming up through the ranks, because again, F3 or GP3 as it was back then, one season wins Formula 2, then wins straight into F1. Could be on a similar track. You never know.
Could be. I also want to say a bit of consistency with Dan Ticktum as well, and hometown hero. Last time out, won. Nobody there to watch it, but this time round, got 3rd place in Sprint Race 2 and 2nd place in the feature race. I don't think he's ever really looking like he was going to win any of the races, but he was certainly showing quite a bit of pace, Thiemo, and he's maturing quite a lot, and his background is always going to be there to dog him, but the fans seem to respond to him.
He's in an interesting place, shall we say, because he's been around a little while now, and he's kind of not quite lost. It's kind of last chance for him, but not at the same time in a way, because he's obviously been linked with Williams for a while. But then again, like you say, the past it didn't help him too much when it first happened, and now it's kind of, even with these 2 decent results this weekend, which fair play, he's managing to up his game and do it consistently. He's still only 5th in the standings, and you think with those 2 results, it's really not enough. 4th, well. Case still kind of making a point, but he's still not doing enough to be up there. Look at Schwartzman. He's what, I need to just check on the standings now, but I mean he was up to 3rd at one point after that win, and you think you do kind of need the win there, and you need to be able to bring those consistent results and be on the podium consistently. And just for whatever reason, even when he's doing that, it's still not seeming to be enough at the moment. I mean, there's still a fair amount of the F2 season left for him to turn things around, but as things stand, I think it's going to be close but no cigar for him.
Yeah, the thing that I've seen with Tickton though that's really impressed me this year, and I think it might be a bit mean to write him off. Could be a poor weekend for any of those top 3 right now, and he's a couple of points off Schwartzman. But it's how much he's adapted to Carlin, and unless we find there's some similar issue to what there was last year with Tsunoda and Daruvula doesn't seem to have an answer. And this weekend was another weekend to forget for Jehan. He taking out drivers and what he scored 1 point. Yeah, it could be, maybe championing, ticked him a little bit here and put him against Aruvula. But I thought with Aruvula being in the Carlin for another year, there might be some sort of relationship that could have helped them a lot. But Ticktum seems to be, holding his own. And I don't know if Carlin had the force that they maybe have been in the past that could go and win the team's championship. Prema seem to be wrapping that up for the moment, at least. But yeah, I don't think Ticktum's done terribly bad. But we want to talk about second seats for a little bit. And Jacob, the ART second seat curse seems to be striking Christian Lundgaard pretty hard. I don't think he's a poor driver, but his championship is... he's out of it, isn't he? He's out of the championship running and his tyres literally falling off.
Yeah, he was coming out that pit lane with 3 wheels on his wagon, and that's, puts the nail in the coffin to his championship charges here. I think I had him down as one of the championship contenders. He certainly went very well last year, and he's, certainly a big name within F2. But, he's just that curse, the second ART, as you said there, Jim. It's not his fault that they couldn't get that wheel on there. I'm not sure exactly what the problem was, but it's probably a loose wheel nut or something. And unfortunately, we say it all the time, don't we? But he's been penalised for what was a team mistake, effectively, and that's him out of the running. We go back to Monaco, for example, and was it a couple of DNFs there? The engine packed up on him. So, just a really disappointing season, I think, to be honest. That's it for his F1 challenge now. That's it for the championship. I think he'd want to get out of that ART pretty soon, to be honest, and certainly get to Monza anyway.
One of those really surprising ones where you can pretty much 90% of it at least blame bad luck, and it's because as soon as he can get in the car and it all goes well for him in terms of reliability and getting all 4 wheels on the car, he can deliver. I mean, he's still got the podium this weekend, and you think maybe that's the start, and then we hoped too soon.
And insult to injury as well, isn't it? It's one of those. I understand why the stewards have to issue a penalty for an unsafe release. It's dangerous.
I don't get why they have to do it to the driver, though.
The driver,
it's not like he decided to take the wheel off his own car.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with that point, because having an unsafe release in the way that he did is poor enough, because how many seconds did he lose having to wait for the wheel to be reattached? And then it's like, oh, yeah, here's more penalties for you, and just kind of completely ruin the rest of your day. But yeah, very, very unsafe. And a little bit actually like Marcus Armstrong in terms of how his season's going, back by an academy, grabbing what seems to be like a bit of a random podium this time around. And he looked delighted to grab it. But otherwise, pretty anonymous again, Marcus Armstrong. And I thought he could have been one of the champions. We spoke, and I remember Gareth mentioning it at the start of the season, it could be 10 drivers that could be in for the championship fight, and Armstrong was considered one of them. But him and Lundgaard, pretty safe to say, I think, Jacob, that both of them are out of the championship hunt.
Yeah, it's definitely both of them out there now. And, Gareth mentioned Armstrong. Yeah, I certainly had him up there as well. Kind of fantastic driver. Went really well at the sort of start of the season, picked up a few point finishes. But this weekend really writes home that, just a consistency thing as well, isn't it? He's picked up a bad result in race 1 there, and he's gone through to race 3, and he's just, not really making his mark on the championship at all. And yeah, I think that's another one that's just out of the championship fight.
We need to really mention Liam Lawson as well. And Thiemo, he seemed to be battling his, I'm not going to say his compatriot, but close enough with Piastri. He seemed to be, they seem to be next to each other the entire time. And how did you rate Lawson? He seems to be fairly consistent, but just making his way into.
Yeah, he kind of flew under the radar a bit this week, and we're kind of used to seeing him a lot more, I feel. But he just kind of, but again, consistent is the key word there. He didn't have a bad weekend by any stretch of imagination. It wasn't an excellent weekend either. But I think at the same time, he did enough to keep himself happy and keep the team happy. And one of the good things about him is that he can just keep building on that, and it's just a nice strong another foundation that he can keep on building on for the rest of the season. Especially now, with, like we were saying before, there's such a big gap. It's a nice little confidence builder for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and confidence building, we need to really speak about, it's probably one of the men of the weekend, if not the man of the weekend, with sure. That overtake, or that decision in this first sprint race to go in and get a fresh set of tyres and then do the overtakes, and on his teammate as well, total inspired move by MP. And that has made him, he grabbed reverse grid pole. then takes the win, his first win in F2. And Jacob, what more does this guy need to do to say, hey, I probably need to have a seat full time?
Well, he's driving like he's racing to save his seat, and the unfortunate nature of this instance is he is. That's what he's exactly doing. And we said it time and time again. It gets quite boring to mention actually, but finances once again playing a part there in the junior Formula. He just hasn't got the finances to back it up. Compared to the other drivers down the bottom of the grid there. Mentioned the ladder, but we won't go into that too much. But yeah, what he needs is finances. But you got to think after that performance. He picked up a win there, fantastic. He looked comfortable as well, and for me, he's always been a very competent driver. He's always gone under the radar. I didn't know too much about him for this season, but certainly he caught my eye in Bahrain. I think there was 3-point finishes there, and he was up in the podium positions there maybe once or twice. I'm not sure, but certainly this weekend he was, and he's on the back of Piastri as well. That's no mean feat at all in that Prema. So he's chasing down what is the championship leader. So hopefully there's a sponsor out there or two who will pick him up after this week, because that's certainly what he needs.
You're definitely living up to the MP Motorsport slogan of MP meaning more, please.
The thing you see with it, though, as you alluded to, Jacob, is that push and more please is exactly what he did. And that fight with Piastri again just seemed to have wheel-to-wheel battles non-stop in the feature race. Piastri a little bit cheeky. I think he cut, was it club corner, and stayed ahead. And it was a great battle to watch at the end of it.
Strategically manoeuvred around it, Jim.
That is a very, very good PR talk, and the Spin Doctor Association will be in touch, so you can work for Prema. But what did you think about that fighting? Did Vasseur deserve that podium, or was that all, all's good in love and war, and Piastri was in war?
I think they both deserved it, to be honest. And I think it was just one of those racing things, wasn't it? You could argue one way or the other, but I'm glad nothing was made of it, because we moaned so much at the time about stewards making the wrong course. I'm glad they just decided there was nothing to investigate there. Was it a little bit cheeky? Yeah, but you can get away with that sometimes, and I think that you should be allowed to get away with it sometimes, especially as if there isn't any real damage done, and there wasn't really, and there was still a couple of opportunities for Vasseur to get past him on the rest of the lap. So I think it was cheeky but acceptable, and we like to see it.
Yeah, sometimes less is more for me. So certainly great that no penalties handed out. We've seen so many penalties given out recently, some ridiculous, some more justified. So I think it's just great that we get to see racing.
Yeah, Thiemo again sitting on the fence for another week. I'm very, very impressed, Thiemo. You're turning, we're mellowing you out a little bit.
Don't worry, when we get to F1 I won't be.
Got any splinters there, Thiemo?
Not yet. I get a bit of paper with me to just iron out the kinks.
Now, we're halfway through the season, which is crazy to think, especially as it seems to be so stop-starty, but we've got 4 rounds to go. We've got a long wait for Monza. There's summer break, but it seems like there's summer break all the time. Sochi, Jeddah, who knows, and Yas Marina. So Monza, the last of the traditional circuits, and I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make in Formula 2. But let's go through the championship standards. We've got Piastri, 108 points, Joe, 103, Schwartzman, 91, Ticktum, 89, Vips, 85, and then big gap down to Pocher, Djokovic, Lawson. Who do we think at this point is going to win the championship, Jacob?
For me, I don't think Joe will have enough. We've seen a great victory today, but like you said, the Saturday wasn't great, and he's been quite inconsistent. To be fair, at the start of the season, he was leading the championship, and I thought he's certainly in with a shout. But for me, in Formula 2, you've got to look at the 2 Prema boys. It's either going to be, for me, Schwartzman or Piastri. I'm not going to sit on the fence. He's got the lead right now. He's consistent. There's only 4 rounds to go. I'm going to say Piastri does it from here.
Prema looks strong. And would you agree with that assessment, Thiemo?
I'd have to, I'm afraid, yeah. Jacob's just hit the nail on the head completely there.
I don't know if I fully agree, but Piastri's consistency is absolutely eye-catching. And it's one of those things, a one bad weekend could happen. And if luck does even out and karma works out, that Piastri's kind of due one of those bad Schwartzman-esque at the start of the season weekends. And I don't think we can write off Schwartzman yet. But at the same time, like we mentioned earlier,
with the luck that you create your own luck occasionally, and Joe definitely did the reverse of that this time around, because his DNF in the second sprint race was entirely his own doing. No one touched him. So
yeah, the first sprint race it was because it ruined the second, didn't it? Because it started from the back. Yeah, a blow of the weekend indeed. Yeah, but I think with the Schwartzman argument, though, I think if Prema finish first and second in the teams, first and second in the Drivers' Championship, if they're in the teams, that'd be impressive. But if they finish first and second in the Drivers' Championship, both those drivers could be asking for a seat in F1 with quite a good argument. So it could be a really successful campaign for them and more of an advert, again, for Prema to say, come and join us because we'll give you a Formula One seat. But we've got a long time to go, halfway through the season, but many months before we find out who that victor is. But for now, we can find out the victor, Thiemo, of your top three from Formula 2 from the Silverstone race.
Well, going off what we were just discussing about championships, Piastri is there in the list. He's doing everything he needs to be doing so far, and it's worked out quite well for him. Now he's on top of the standings. For sure on the list. And then just because he deserves a mention, even though all the bad luck coming his way, for that podium, Lundgaard gets in the top three because it was just so nice. He's kind of the George Russell of Formula 2, I feel, at the moment. Not his fault.
No, it wasn't his fault at all. Jacob, do you agree with that? Is Lundgaard getting your top three?
Lundgaard's not, but he's certainly, a notable mention there. I do agree with the other two that Thiemo said. Piastri, once again, I've mentioned consistently so many times I'm getting bored of mentioning the word, but Piastri, once again, showing why he's the championship favourite. I've gone for sure. Why wouldn't you? A fantastic drive, really put himself in the shop window. And the third driver I've chosen this weekend is Ticktum, once again, for consistency in front of the home crowd. 2 podiums, absolutely lovely stuff.
Yeah, I'll get really boring. I think this is one of the I think we do every week at the moment, Jacob, but I agree with those top three. I think Ticktum was the one I thought you guys might not go for, but he said in his post-race interview for the feature race that he was finding it more emotional, or it meant more to have that podium in front of the crowd. Last time out, no crowd there. And yeah, fully deserved 2 podiums. If you get 2 podiums at a weekend, you're doing pretty well. So Ticktum's there, and the other 2 for obvious reasons. And your favourite time, Thiemo, to take a big dump on some of the drivers. Who've got for your bottom 3?
Well, I've got a big name in there, as alluded to earlier, in Guan Yu Zhou, just because some of it not entirely his fault, but one of them definitely was, and I honestly don't know what happened there, but he gets poo-pooed on for that reason. Aiken maybe a little bit unfairly, but I feel like as the driver that we know him to be, he didn't really go anywhere this weekend a lot. I mean, there was the incident, of course, but at the same time, the other 2 races, he wasn't really anywhere, which was a shame to see, so I put him there for that. And then my third driver is Nannini, because for a driver who, again, we've said this before a couple of times, who's doing dual campaigns in F2 and F3, you'd expect some decent result in at least one of them. And so far, I'm not quite sure why he's in either.
Wow, that's a little bit scathing, but I understand why you'd say it. Jacob, your bottom 3?
Yeah, the first driver I've chosen this weekend is one that's appeared many times in this podcast, Alessio De Leda. Yeah, just really, really poor, no speed whatsoever, and he's just showing that he shouldn't be anywhere near Formula 3, let alone Formula 2. I've chosen De Rouva as well. Another one earmarked for maybe potential, not necessarily the championship, but certainly the upper echelons of the standings. He was really nowhere, wasn't he? He was really messy. He had that instant sprint race 2, I think it was, and he was lucky to pick up a point. There was a great strategy there from the Carlin boys, but yeah, really, really nowhere this weekend. And the final name I've chosen, I'm going to copy Thiemo here, Jack Aitken in front of the home crowd. Although we know that HWA, to use a commonly used phrase, is an absolute box. You can bleep me out if you want, but that car's never really up to scratch. But yeah, he didn't really do much. He looks messy, and he looks a bit rusty as well.
Yeah, the HWA really isn't doing a lot. With the Inside F2 podcast that was on, he mentioned about how he's kind of there and he's helping them out with his experience as they try and make their way forwards. But quite interesting to listen. But I feel it's a bit harsh that the car.
Very, very kind of him, but doesn't do him any favours in the meantime.
No, but I think he didn't even expect to be in Formula 2 this year, and now he's done 3 rounds out of nowhere. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing for him. I think it's a bit harsh for. I don't know what you could expect him to do, and he had that weird issue when he spun by himself in the second sprint race, didn't he? And then there's a bit when his front right tire, I think it was, in the pit lane, just completely locked up, which is bizarre.
Just locked.
I've never seen anything like that. But he does.
That's inspiring.
No, it was inspired. I don't know how that managed, but I don't. Not going to have Aitken in my bottom three, but I am going to have, and it breaks my heart a little bit, but Ralph Boschong, been quite consistent all year and then didn't seem to do much this time out, apart from cause a safety car, one of the many, many safety cars that we've seen. But yeah, Deleda out thanks to a Boschong incident. And in a similar fashion, Deruvala for that incident we mentioned as well. He hit Bent Viscal, he got a penalty, he caused all sorts of dramas and just seemed to be completely off the pace, especially compared to Ticktum. And then my last one I've kind of struggled with. So what I've done, and this might be a bit weird, but I thought Schwartzman, Zhou, championship protagonists, and both of them have weird off spins all by themselves in sprint races. So if you combine the two, then maybe I can make a one, and they could be my third driver. So that's one man together. So equally as good and equally as bad as each other. But yeah, bit of a non-starter Formula 2 this time, and Silverstone can deliver, but I'm not sure if it did deliver at all across all the races. But yeah, Formula 2 in particular, not the best round this time, but we'll be doing it all again in, I think, 7-8 weeks' time when we go to Monza, and hopefully a bit more of an interesting race.
If anyone can fix it, it's Monza.
If anyone can fix it, it's Monza. But until that time, for the Formula 2 at least, where can people find your work on the internet, Thiemo?
You can find me here on GP Grandstand, of course, and over on Drive Tribe and on Instagram, and search YouTube for Undercovers for other driver interviews from across the motorsport world.
Yeah, check those links out in the description below on YouTube or in the show notes on podcasts. And Jacob, same to you.
You can find me here every week on GP Grandstand and over on Twitter at JacobPhil18.
And for myself, I'm writing on gpgrandstand.com and fortlock.com. For my satire F1 news, search the F1 Week that was on YouTube. And of course, I'm on the Grand Prix Grandstand TV YouTube channel, where you'll find me interviewing drivers and speaking with these guys, talking a load of F1. Thank you for watching us talk F1, and keep your eyes peeled for the next episode, where you can hear us talking F1 all over again.